How's it going, all you mentees? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for your advanced look at the X-23 OMNIBUS Volume 1 from Marvel Comics. So, let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. So before getting started, I do want to thank the folks at Marvel Comics, David Gabriel, for sending us an advanced copy of this omnibus. This omnibus is due out in the direct market and book market on June 27th or 28th, depending on where you get your books. What we're looking at here is the standard edition cover, and I know, and I've been asked about this whenever I do my Saturday live streams, what's going on with the border, because they've solicited just that white cover. And from time to time, they do add things or change things or add borders like this. But yes, there is now a border on both this and the direct market cover. And speaking of direct market cover, on the left-hand side is your direct market cover, with also a different design for the spine, the picture at the bottom with Laura. Now, the direct market cover, that one is supplied by Lionel Francis Yu, whereas the standard edition cover is supplied by Mike Choi. However, everything else underneath the dust jacket is the same. So, let's take a closer look at this, because it is interesting that we don't have like an X-23 title. It's the logo that we actually get. It doesn't say anywhere down here like the creators or Volume 1. We just have the Marvel logo, and then of course this frame, which isn't really a frame per se because it's all sketchy. Feels like it's just like some kind of pattern that they're using, like scratch marks around there. Claw marks probably more exact, even around here and here. But Marvel Omnibus X-23 Volume 1, I love seeing that. The best there is at what she does. And of course this is the character of Laura Kinney, and I'll talk a little bit about her and the history of how all this got started. Parental Advisory, due to some of the violence found in some of these particular issues that are collected in here. And then $125 is the retail price. This tells you what is collected in the book. Alright, let's look under the dust jacket. So first, let's look at the flaps here, beginning the story of the girl who will be Wolverine, and then the creators over here on the right-hand side. And just not really Uncanny Omar Talk Pretty One Day, not really giving you a bio of the creators, but what they've worked on. Now, let's look underneath here, and we have this particular cover that I was at first, okay, it's obviously Joshua Middleton, that's who drew this, the same artist that did MYX, well, the first few issues of MYX, and then it's Chris Bachalo, but no, this is Alina Urusov, is the artist that this particular book cover. She's the artist that did the one-shot cover, which is collected in here, X-23, Volume 1, and then again, more of that pattern that we see because of the frame, X-23. Alright, so we're going to open this up. We are going to talk a little bit about the history of the character of Laura Kinney, what is not collected in here, and is it really necessary? And then, of course, look at the stories and check out this wonderful artwork. Minor spoilers going in for the character of X-23. So, I mean, if you're buying this already, hit that like button, please, on the way out. And, yeah, skip the overview and just go ahead and get to the actual build of the book when I talk about the binding and the pages. Alright, let's go ahead and start. Alright, let's go ahead and crack this open. We have some black end paper there, and then we have this image of Laura with the Ken. What is collected in here, including all of the creators, the writers, the artists. Sometimes it's just artists because it's penciling and inking and even color sometimes. But yes, most of the time it's pencilers, inkers, colorists, letterers, everybody that had something printed in this particular book. And kicking it off with X-23 2005 number 1. So let's talk about what is collected in here, and then we'll go back and talk about what is not collected in here and when to read it. So this collects the first X-23 miniseries, which came out in 2005. That is just called X-23, and it collects all 6 issues of that. Then we get X-23 Target X 1 through 6, X-23, the one-shot, just number 1. X-23, the 2010 series, 1 through 21, when it was greenlit to have her own series. Captain Universe X-23, that was a big event, sort of like a little mini event. I said big event, but whenever I think of Captain Universe, it's always big. But I don't think it did that well when Captain Universe was just going around the Marvel Universe and taking over people. And X-23 was one of those people. Interestingly enough, Ken Dark Wolverine 8 through 9 has a little bit of material from volume or issue number 7 as well. And then material from X-Men To Serve and Protect number 2, Wolverine Road to Hell, and all new Wolverine Saga. Alright, so what is not collected in here? Let's get that out of the way. NYX, which shows her first appearance in the Marvel Comics. And also not collected in here are issues of Uncanny X-Men, where she ends up meeting the X-Men for the first time, and her run on New X-Men when it was written by Kyle and Yost, not the Grant Morrison era, and also the X-Force by Kyle and Yost. So that's the stuff you're not going to find in here, and I'll tell you as I read, or as we look at this, where to best read those. And they do a really good job of like giving you a recap of what's happened in the past through here, and I'll show you what those pages look like. Okay, so now a little bit of history, just a little bit, about the character of Laura Kinney. So Laura did not originate in the comic books. As a matter of fact, she originated in a cartoon called X-Men Evolution. And in this cartoon, we had a character called X-23, but fans loved her so much that Marvel Comics took an interest and said, you know, let's put her in the comic book. So they put her in a comic book by Joe Quesada and Joshua Middleton called NYX. It was a 7-issue miniseries showing the dark side of mutants. And a lot of fans were not happy with her portrayal in there. A lot of fans were upset in the way that the character was brought over into the comics. And to kind of give you a little bit of background as to why, well, the character in that book is an underage prostitute. So a lot of people were upset about that. That did nothing to add to the character. So what they did later on was bring the creators, Kyle and Yost, who worked on X-Men Evolution, to the comics to give us a new miniseries featuring her true origin. And it's not so much so that NYX is retcon, it's just something nobody really talks about, just like her meeting the X-Men. But I'll talk a little bit about when to read those stories if you're curious, because they do a good job mapping this book. So yes, very much in the same way that Harley Quinn was so popular in the Batman animated series, that's the same way we got X-23. Cartoon, then the comics, and now she's just part of the big Marvel Comics. I mean, she took over Wolverine's mantle, cowl, name, after, well, he was not available. I'll just leave it at that. Alright, so now let's talk about the story. What is the story of Laura? Okay, so, really quick, we find out years back during the original Weapon X project, when Logan, Weapon X, the original Weapon X, he escaped, he killed one of the scientists. Last name Rice, first name D. Right? He killed one of the scientists. The guy that was kind of running the program went to tell his son, Xander. Years later, Xander Rice is now working at the Weapon X facility. And what they're trying to do, between him and this lady named Sarah Kinney, is trying to redo or recapture that magic that was Weapon X. And it's failure after failure that they're trying to clone this Weapon X, this ultimate weapon that they can control. So it's failure after failure. And then what Sarah finds out is that, wait a minute, if we're taking all these clones, maybe we can add some DNA. And what she brings up to the table is that we're going to clone Wolverine. We're making it a girl, because you can find out exactly the comic book science behind that. And the deal was that, okay, if we're going to make it a girl, then Xander, who's really ticked off about this idea, by the way, says that she has to carry it all 9 months. So she carries the baby, and a baby girl is born. Now, she doesn't give it a name yet. Doesn't give the baby a name, and that happens towards the end here. And it's a really heartbreaking story when she finds out her name is Laura. So here she's trained to be an assassin, and man, she is cruelly treated. Xander bonds adamantium in her, but instead of like giving her any kind of anesthesia, he just bonds the adamantium to her bones while she's still awake. Damn, that is some dark stuff, because just like Wolverine, and because she is a clone of him, and I guess, in a way, Sarah, she does have claws. Now, she has 2 claws coming out of her hand and 1 coming out of her foot. So now her bones are laced with adamantium. And eventually, of course, her mother, because she believes, that is her daughter. That's the way she treats her. She reads her Pinocchio every night, and it's a beautiful story. So Sarah is like, okay, I gotta get my daughter out of here. I'm not gonna let these idiots train her to be an assassin. So she sends her on a mission to break out of the Weapon X facility. Now, the reason she's known as X-23 is because they've had previous X's that have not been successful. So we had like X-11, X-12. And I know the Grant Morrison Assault on Weapon X. Ugh. Never liked that retcon. Sorry. Staying neutral. Yes, there was this theory that Weapon X really stood for Weapon 10. And they went back like Captain America being Weapon 1. So, just in case you're wondering why it's X-23, there were others in between Weapon X and 23. So the first miniseries focuses on her being trained to be a powerful assassin, and also bonding with her mother and breaking out of the facility. Now let's talk a little bit about the creators behind this. So Kyle and Yost, Craig Kyle and Christopher Yost from the animation studios wrote this miniseries. Now at this time they were also writing the new X-Men stories. The ones that were not the Grant Morrison New X-Men, but the ones that took over New Mutants. I know it's a little bit confusing. This is why I do reading orders. But it's the one by Nuncio and DePhillips. They took over that run. So they had been writing some comics, and they wanted to introduce this character through those pages. And that is talked about through here. The artwork is by Billy Tan. Billy Tan coming from that Image, Top Cow world, and it has a very Silvestri and almost sometimes from time to time Michael Turner, Jim Lee type of art style. He's the one that did the Rise and Fall of the Shi'ar Empire. So that's the first 6-issue minis. Years later, and of course censoring that final page of the original mini, we get Target X. Now, Target X is where Laura finds out her name, and she goes and tries to find her family. So Laura Kinney's out there trying to find family. There's a little bit of flashbacks here. Of course, it's never that easy. Here's Kimura, a character that's introduced through these pages. Now, she goes and sees her cousin, and she sees her aunt, who were both introduced in the very first miniseries. This is Sarah's sister, and that is her daughter, Megan. So she tries to live a normal life with them, but we keep going back and forth. We see present time and we see flashback. So that's the flashback. Present time is her being kind of interrogated by Captain America and Daredevil, wanting to know exactly what happened. So that's a little bit of the story. Laura's trying to live a normal life. And, of course, things don't always work out. You can find out exactly what happens. Kimura plays a big part in all of this, but the big thing that happens through these pages happens in issue number 6. So the final issue, where she finally confronts her father, or the person whose clone she is, Wolverine. She attacks him at the mansion, and Wolverine, of course, knows that something is coming. He senses her. There's some amazing artwork in here. Again, this is Colin Yost writing the story. The artwork this time around, though, is done by Mike Choi. Big fan of his art. Also somebody from the Image world, working on Valiant Comics now. He also had a little bit of a run with, he didn't have a run with, he had a little bit of a run in Uncanny X-Men during Matt Fraction's era and Ed Brubaker's era. Censoring that final page of the miniseries to talk about this recap page that states that NYX is still in continuity. It talks about what happens through that pages, but also how she ends up meeting the X-Men during Chris Claremont's run in the Savage Land. So all that is still in continuity, even though a lot of writers don't talk about it. Then we get the Captain Universe one-shot, where she gets possessed by the power of Captain Universe. There's a fight and a team-up with Scorpion. At the end of this, so now censoring that final page of the Captain Universe one-shot, is a recap of how Wolverine pretty much got her to come over and join the new X-Men, so she was there for a while. And then he promoted her, I don't know if that's the right word or not, to the espionage team, the Black Ops team of X-Force. So she joined that for a while. Then we get a one-shot. Now, this one-shot here is by Marjorie Liu, who will be the ongoing writer. And this is her dealing with her past, with a lot of the things that happened during NYX. So it's her coming back to those particular stories. And then we get the ongoing series, again, written by Marjorie Liu. This time around, Will Conrad doing some of the first few issues. And I'll be honest, if you've not read this before, those first 3 issues are a little bit confusing if you're not reading what's happening with the rest of the X titles, because this is during the Utopia era. It's also during the Wolverine Goes to Hell storyline, which is found in the pages of Jason Aaron's book. And she beats up with Hellion, who was one of the characters in New X-Men. So if you hadn't been reading like the X titles, it gets a little bit confusing. And finally, though, after the first 3 issues, which, by the way, there's some flashbacks here by Sana Takeda, who will be joining Marjorie Liu later on as kind of the ongoing artist on this. There's a lot of Takeda artwork. And, of course, they met back together to do Monstrous. But after the 3rd issue is where you get a little bit of the story here from X-Men to Serve and Protect #2, written by Cy Spurrier. It's drawn by David LaFuente and teams her up with Ghost Rider. Then, finally, in issue number 4, this is where she kind of finds her own identity in a way, right? Because we've known her as the clone of Wolverine, but now she's going on a road trip, trying to find out who she is, and I really enjoyed those issues. The issues where she's alone, of course she's never really alone because we have Gambit joining her for the trip, but just out there in the desert, traveling, running into Miss Sinister, and then later Mr. Sinister. This is what was really fun to me. I really like that, kind of finding her own ground in the Marvel Universe. And the Marvel Universe is so big, though, that she does have team-ups later on. Now, this is not a big recap, but just a little bit of a recap as to what was going on in the pages of the Ken, Dark Wolverine, how he became Dark Wolverine, and why both of them are finally going to clash. Because the clone of Wolverine and the son of Wolverine have to meet, and when they meet, it's a bloodbath. Now, I love this story because it features Madripoor, some awesome characters like Tiger, and some wonderful artwork through these pages. And this is the crossover with Dark Wolverine, and this is what his costume looked like, the Ken's costume during that particular time. But my all-time favorite stories out of this entire run, the X-23 1 through 21, is that of the team-up with Jubilee. Jubilee, during this time, a vampire. Again, you may have to read a little bit of X-Men to find out how she became a vampire, but man, do I love those issues. I thought this was really cool. Just having her and Jubilee team up together was wonderful, because, this is before the time of Honey Badger, so all this takes place before All New Wolverine, when she took over the mantle or the cowl of Wolverine. Here's the team up with the Fantastic Four, and it is a long story arc. As a matter of fact, it almost goes all the way to the end of her story. Again, some wonderful artwork this time around. Phil Noto doing some of the fill-in artwork. Marco Cacchetto doing some of the fill-in artwork. But just phenomenal artists working on this book, and of course with Sana Takeda doing most of the art here. Forgot there's also the Ryan Stegman issue in here. So this does collect all 21 issues of the run. Let's go all the way to the back here to look at the back matter. All right, so welcome back, everybody that didn't want any kind of spoilers. Now we're looking at the back matter. So, this is definitely separated by creators, this particular omnibus. You have the original creators of the character coming in and writing the stories during their time of New X-Men and X-Force. And then you have Marjorie Liu doing an ongoing story set during the time of Utopia and what was going on in the pages of Wolverine. So you have some variant covers, some thumbnail sketches, a little bit of the saga of Wolverine, the explanation of the homage covers here, which are really nice, and concept sketches, original art here without the lettering, And then I believe this here is the saga. Yeah, this begins the saga of X-23, the origin of her. And then this is the X-23 history retold. But it's a lot of stuff you've already read, and then putting in NYX, her run-in with the X-Men, and then her time with the new X-Men, and her time with X-Force. So you get the entire story, because I think putting all of that into an omnibus would have been difficult. Celebrating the Women of Marvel right here is an interview with Marjorie Liu. Let's look at the binding. 928 pages, and it is sewn binding. This one here printed at the iMac printer. Let's look back a little bit. Actually, let's go back to the first issue because this one has a lot of white, so you can kind of see the amount of bleed through. The paper stock in this is thinner than that of the Captain Marvel by Kelly Thompson. And I was talking about how thick that one was. But yeah, this is thinner than that. Not the thinnest like the JMS, but I did want to point that out. And there is some white, especially through this first two miniseries. Some lighter colors where you're going to see a lot of the bleed through as an example. Yeah, like here you can see the word bubble coming through. But yes, this collection, what this collection did is kind of give me hope that they go and revisit this era of Colin Yost. Give us some X-Force. Give us the Messiah trilogy in a big oversized format. I did want to do one thing before we leave, though. Before I stop talking about this book. I wanted to compare a little bit of the art to this book right here. This is the NYX oversized hardcover. It reprints the first miniseries that's collected in here. It kicks it off with her origin, and then NYX, but it doesn't have NYX2. No idea where it was printed, as they don't give credit as to where it was printed, but just to kind of give you an idea of the book and the paper stock here. So the paper stock they're using for this, yes, they're using Borders again for this. It's a lot thicker, and this is one that had a hard time staying open, at least for me. But to kind of give you an idea, you don't really see a lot of bleed through here. You see just a tiny bit, but you see more here in the white. And again, using these as an example. And these pages, I just wanted to compare the color of the omnibus to the color of the oversized hardcover. It's a little bit darker over here than over here. And just comparing the light colors between the OHC and this right here. Now, NYX2, like I said, is not collected in here. It's never been collected in oversized hardcover format. Just standard size hardcover edition and in trade paperback. Just a little bit of bleed through then over here. But they want to cover my bases. And then, of course, the way the book lays over. Let's go back to the beginning, 'cause can't do any spoilers. We're at the very first issue. You have to hold it down a little bit to read some of the word bubbles or narration boxes that are right up against the edge here towards the beginning. Gets better towards the middle, and of course the end again. You have to do a little bit of this. Just shows you a little bit of good or loss that is happening here. But that's it. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltzcomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this book. Let me know in the comments down below if you are picking this up, which cover you're going to get. If you've never read X-23 and you've always been curious about her because of the X-Men Evolution cartoon or because you've read about her in the pages of X-Force, And if you have read this series, or this particular stories collected in here, let me know in the comments down below what you think about them. And what you would love to see in a possible Volume 2, or maybe an NYX collection, or a early years collection. I guess that collects the Uncanny X-Men issues. But anyway, as for me, I would love to see the X-Force by Kyle and Yost collected in an omnibus format. So, that's all for me. Everyone stay healthy and safe out there. Smash that like button on the way out. Much love.